It's the 13th century BCE. Hector of Troy is running for his life. This is the story of the most famous duel ever fought, and why the man who won it lost everything. Two warriors, one half divine, one entirely human, and the human is the one you'll never forget. Homer's Iliad, the oldest epic in Western literature, doesn't begin with glory. It begins with one word: rage. A rage so total that Homer used a word reserved only for the anger of gods. But to understand how two men's collision reshaped Western storytelling forever, we start with a stolen bride. A Trojan prince named Paris visited Sparta as a guest of King Menelaus. He left with the king's wife. Therefore, the Greeks assembled the largest military force the ancient world had ever seen, over 1,000 ships. They sailed to the coast of what is now Turkey and laid siege to the city of Troy. For 10 years, the siege ground on, 10 years of stalemate beneath walls that would not break. But Homer's Iliad doesn't tell the whole war. It covers just 51 days in the final year. And at the center of those 51 days stands one man, Achilles. Son of a mortal king and Thetis, a sea goddess, half human, half divine, fully doomed. His mother gave him a prophecy, two fates, and he had to choose between them. Stay at Troy and die young, but earn a glory that echoes through eternity. Or go home, live long, die quiet, be forgotten. Achilles chose Troy, but when the Iliad begins, he isn't fighting. He's sitting in his tent, refusing to move. The Greek commander Agamemnon had humiliated him publicly. So Achilles went on strike, and Greeks started dying. On the other side of those walls stood a very different kind of warrior. Hector, crown prince, eldest of King Priam's 50 sons, no divine blood, entirely vulnerably human. He didn't start this war. His brother Paris did. But the war found Hector, and he couldn't walk away. Because Hector had something Achilles had already given up: a wife, a son, a reason to come home. He told Andromache he knew Troy would fall. He grieved most for what would happen to her afterward. He reached for his baby son. The boy screamed, terrified of his father's war helmet. Hector laughed, took off the helmet, held his son, and prayed the boy would surpass him someday. Homer built these two men as mirrors, one fighting to fulfill a destiny, the other fighting to delay a city's doom. But what turned their collision from a battle into something unforgivable was a third man. Patroclus, Achilles' closest companion, the most important relationship in Achilles' entire life. Now, here's something most people get wrong about this story. The Achilles heel, the famous weak spot. It doesn't appear anywhere in Homer's Iliad. That story was invented 800 years later by a Roman poet. Homer's Achilles is simply mortal, and he knows he's going to die. While Achilles sat in his tent, Hector did what no one thought possible. He pushed the Greeks to the sea. He set a Greek warship on fire. The flames could be seen from Achilles' tent. Patroclus went to Achilles weeping. Homer compared him to a little girl tugging at her mother's dress. "Let me fight in your armor," he begged. "If the Trojans see it, they'll think you've returned." Achilles agreed, but he gave one warning: drive them back from the ships and stop there. Do not go further. Patroclus followed the first instruction. He ignored the second. He fought brilliantly, pushing the Trojans back, killing warriors by the dozen, including a son of Zeus himself. Flushed with victory, Patroclus charged toward Troy's walls, exactly where Achilles told him not to go. Then a god came for him. Apollo descended from behind and struck him between the shoulder blades. His helmet flew off, his spear shattered, his armor came loose, and Hector found him. Hector drove his spear home. Patroclus fell. With his final breath, Patroclus delivered a prophecy straight to Hector's face. Hector's own death was racing toward him. Then Hector stripped the divine armor from Patroclus's body, and he put it on. Zeus watched from above, and he spoke what translators have called the saddest line in the entire Iliad. Poor fool, he dressed himself in the armor of the man who would destroy him. When the news reached Achilles, he collapsed. He poured ash over his face. He tore his own hair. His screams were so loud that his divine mother heard them from the bottom of the sea. Before this moment, Achilles was on strike over wounded pride. Now pride meant nothing at all. He told his mother that killing Hector would seal his own death. He accepted it without hesitation. Thetis went to the divine smith Hephaestus. He owed her a debt, and he worked through the night. The new shield depicted the entire cosmos, cities at war and at peace, harvests, dances, the ocean. Everything he was fighting for, everything he was giving up, forged into one piece of bronze. Achilles returned to the battlefield, and the Trojans ran like animals before a wildfire. Every Trojan warrior rushed back inside the city gates, every single one. Except one. But here's the strange thing. In the middle of this death chase, Homer stops the action completely. He describes two springs outside the walls, one warm, one cold, where Trojan women used to wash their laundry before the war. A frozen portrait of the world this war destroyed, planted inside the most violent scene Homer ever wrote. From Troy's high walls, King Priam tears at his white hair. He is screaming for his son to come inside. Hector's mother bears the breast that nursed him, begging by every intimacy a mother can invoke. Hector doesn't move. Homer lets us hear his thoughts. Retreat means shame. Negotiation means death. The only option left is to fight, and then Achilles arrives, equal to the god of war. And Hector, Troy's greatest warrior, turns and runs. 3 full circuits around the walls of Troy, the greatest defender in the city, sprinting for his life. Every time Hector veers toward a gate, Achilles cuts him off. There is no way back inside. On Olympus, Zeus lifts his golden scales. On one side, Achilles' fate, on the other, Hector's. Hector's side sinks down. Fate is sealed. Therefore Athena descends, disguised as Hector's own brother Deiphobus. She tells him they'll face Achilles together. Hector stops running. He turns, and for the first time in the chase, he feels hope. He calls out to Achilles and proposes one condition: return the loser's body for proper burial. Achilles refuses. No oaths between lions and men. No mercy between wolves and lambs. Achilles throws first. He misses. Athena retrieves the spear invisibly and returns it to his hand. Hector throws. His spear hits the divine shield dead center. It bounces off. He turns for another weapon. No one is there. The space beside him is empty. And in that instant, Hector understands everything. The gods have tricked him. Heaven itself has let him die. But Hector does not beg. He does not run again. He draws his sword and charges, declaring he will not die without glory, that men in the future will hear of this. Achilles watches him come. He studies the armor, his own former armor. He knows every gap in it. He finds the gap at the throat, where the collarbones meet the neck. Hector falls in the dust of Troy. Dying, Hector makes one final plea: return my body to my family. Achilles refuses with absolute fury. With his last breath, Hector prophesies, Paris and Apollo will destroy you at the Scaean gates. Achilles answers, die. I'll accept my own death whenever the gods send it. Then Achilles tied Hector's body by the ankles to his chariot and drove. Priam watched from the walls. Hecuba watched, but Andromache, she didn't know yet. She was warming bathwater for a husband who would never come home. The sound of mourning from the walls reached her first. She knew before she saw. She dropped her weaving shuttle, she dropped her colored yarns. She fell. For 12 days, Achilles dragged Hector's body around Patroclus's funeral mound, but killing him hadn't stopped the grief. The man who thought vengeance would give his grief somewhere to go discovered that grief has no bottom. But the gods refused to let Hector be destroyed. Apollo spread a golden cloud over the body. Not a mark touched him. That night, an old king loaded a wagon with gold and drove alone into the enemy camp. Priam, guided by a god through sleeping Greek sentinels, entered the tent of the man who killed his son. He fell at Achilles' feet. He clasped the hands that had killed Hector, and he said, "Think of your own father. I have done what no man on earth has done, kissed the hands of my son's killer." Achilles wept, not for Hector, for his own father, who would never see him come home alive. And the two of them, Greek warrior and Trojan king, wept together. Homer says, remembering they wept. Achilles returned the body. He promised 12 days of truce for Hector's funeral. The Iliad does not end with Achilles' triumph. It ends with 11 days of mourning and a funeral pyre. And Achilles? The Iliad never shows his death, but it came soon, exactly as Hector promised. Paris, the man whose selfishness started the entire war, killed him with a single arrow at the Scaean gates. The greatest warrior who ever lived, killed from a distance by the most unworthy man in the story. Homer is arguing something across every page of this poem. Glory and tragedy are not opposites. They are the same thing, forged together, inseparable. The duel between Achilles and Hector is not a story about who was stronger. It is a story about what strength costs and who pays for it. Remember the beginning? Hector running for his life outside Troy's walls. He ran. The greatest warrior Troy ever had turned and ran from Achilles. But he turned back, knowing the gods had abandoned him, knowing he would die. He charged, because men in the future would hear of it. And here we are, 3,000 years later. Achilles won the fight, but Homer gave the last line of the poem to Hector. Such was their burial of Hector, breaker of horses.